Saul Kaplan.
You better believe it.
How excited were you on the big URI win?
My wife and I, my wife's also a graduate, and we were glued to the games. Our weekend was designed around rooting for URI, and we are ecstatic, not just because we're basketball fans,
Right.
But for URI and for the state. It means so much, and I'm so excited for the team, for the university, for achieving what they said they were going to do. We've been watching this program a long time. They had the talent. The coach, is amazing and did what he said he was going to do. And I'm most excited about what it means for the players and the seniors, who invested themselves into a coach and a program with the promise that they would dance, and they're going to dance, and it's so cool. But we can talk about the aspects of the state and innovation,
absolutely,
and, like so much that relate to it. But yeah, I had to leave my signature blazer at home and put on the sweater today.
No, it's great. I mean, it is, and it's not an easy thing. I mean, Mike Martin was just here. He'd probably give his left or right arm, maybe both of them, to get to
be there,
the tournament. And amazingly, this year, no college in Massachusetts made it. No BC,
no UMass,
no Holy Cross, no.
But UVM, I saw, if you like.
Yeah, right.
But I saw UVM.
And on the prognostication shows, there was a lot of experts talking up UVM grabbing a game.
Yeah.
So,
and
UVM's probably famous grad, and one of the greatest shots of all time in NCAA basketball history was TJ Sorrentine when Vermont beat Syracuse up in Worcester, and TJ coaches with Mike over at Brown.
Well, we're old. I'm old.
Right.
So I was at URI in the 70s. I was during the Jiggy Williams and Sly
right.
Williams era, PC, Marvin Barnes. And so, I mean, these were real
And Herb
national
Chapman
contenders.
did not go over the back, did he?
Yeah, so much fun. So, no, really excited for the team. I haven't really wrapped my mind around, like, what the initial games look. I got to think about Creighton and what that's going to mean. But just getting through that A10 tournament, everybody thinking we're going to play Dayton, and then all of a sudden, wow, that path looks reasonably clear. It's ours to lose, but they did their job.
Yeah, it was
really
great.
Impressive.
And so, let's take a little bit about the lessons of that. Is there anything applicable from the run of URI to rebuilding the Rhode Island economy?
I think having a very clear, intentional strategy. We put a lot of priority on the basketball program there, and they've made a sustained investment. Everyone loves to debate how much we pay Danny Hurley, and we can debate did he earn it yesterday? I say yes, but there's still the debate of how much do we pay a basketball coach relative to other things we need to do at a public university. And I think that's a cool conversation to have. And,
it's not a bad conversation to have.
No, it's not a bad conversation to have, but I will tell you that the amount of exposure that URI is going to have nationally over the next week, and what that means in terms of recruiting faculty, never mind recruiting basketball players, which of course it helps, but recruiting faculty members, it makes a huge difference, right? Not just financially, but it also changes the psychology of how we feel about the place. As an alumni, like now all of a sudden, like I'm wearing a sweater, I'm out and talking to you on a webcam, about URI. And we should be talking about URI.
So great teams, always, I think, have a couple of elements to them. One, there's a selflessness to them, right? Regardless of who the player is. And all those young men could play 30 minutes a game, but they don't. And some only get to play 10 minutes a game, and they could transfer, maybe play 30 minutes a game, but they have made a decision.
So there's the team aspects to this.
And they sacrifice, an individual sacrifice to make the whole thing go. Is that part of our problem? We've got a speaker and a governor fighting over this and that. They're tweeting at each other on Friday afternoon. Is there that
I think so. A high-performing team, whether it's a sports team or a team in government or at a college or in a company,
Right.
The characteristics of a high-performing team are they have a clear shared purpose.
Right.
They all go in to take the same hill.
Right.
They understand what their roles and responsibilities are. They back each other up. They have each other's back. They are resilient, right? How resilient was this URI team when injuries happened over the course of the year?
Yep.
They learned how to overcome that, made them stronger and better heading into the end of the year. These are characteristics that aren't just about a basketball team. These are characteristics of how we collaborate. And yes, I think in Rhode Island, if we had, I sometimes say 1 or 2 clicks on the collaboration meter, where people were more willing to create a shared purpose and to explore different ways to accomplish it, rather than always protecting our own silos, protecting our own institutions, trying to prevent somebody else from getting a stronger position than us, right? Those are not the team characteristics that are high performing.
So right now we got a massive debate about 2 elements. One is the governor's proposal to underwrite 2 years of college at each of the state universities, and competing with it or not competing with it. I guess it's being positioned as competing with it, is the elimination of the car tax.
Right.
And so there does not seem to be that this is, these seem to be more opponents than on the same team.
Well, part of that is healthy, and then part of that, is like, in the end, are we going to be able to compromise? Both of those policy objectives are, I could argue on behalf of.
Yeah,
right?
right,
And I would say it'd be great if we could do both of those things,
Right.
but maybe we don't have the resources to do both.
Right.
So we need a process for how we're going to decide which of those things we're going to do, and let the conversation happen in a transparent way. Let the public weigh in. Let's actually move forward based on a decision that we all buy into and kind of. So that's a healthy part of a democracy. It's a healthy part of the way government's supposed to work and interact with the public. When you have a government that is as imbalanced as it is here in Rhode Island, you start to worry about whether that process, is going to work and reflect, what we as citizens want. So I'd love to see that debate happen. I would love to see better balance in the committees that are going to look at it, in the General Assembly, and have a healthy debate about which of these things are more important for us to do right now.
So is the answer to this literally having Coach Hurley go into a closed-door session with legislative leaders and give them one of those halftime speeches when you're down by 15 points?
Well, there you go. Coach Hurley should be describing what a high-performing team is and how it achieves a result, and he should be calling out the behaviors when he doesn't see it, whether it's in the URI basketball team, URI, the state in general. Like, how do we build more collaboration muscle so that we could actually move together towards some kind of shared and common purpose? And in Rhode Island, we're, sometimes I call it small state syndrome.
Yeah.
Right? We're not taking advantage of our size. We're actually acting with more splintered and more silos and more fragmentation because everyone's worried about their own position.
So I think that's a really good point. We talked a few weeks ago about Norwegian being an example of when it works. Right? Everybody just about everybody got together and pulled in the same direction and was able to do something fairly miraculous. The head of the Cork airport was here Thursday, and he was in town, and they were kind of in the same boat because they're small. This is their first international flights over, and he said, you guys just beat out Boston. That never happens. I mean, when does Providence beat out Boston for much of anything? But this was a good example. He said, you just outworked them. You outdid it. You outmaneuvered them. And so, how do we... Is the small state syndrome in the negative that you just described, does that happen in Delaware and New Hampshire and Vermont?
It happens everywhere. The problem is we're too small to play that way.
Right.
When you're the smallest state in the country, if you look as fragmented as it looks everywhere else, you're not taking advantage of your secret sauce.
Right.
I call it our red ruby slippers.
Yeah.
Right? We're wearing them. We just don't know we're wearing them. It's the small size and the ability to hypothetically work better as a team, but yet when you actually look at how we work on most days, you have to scratch your head and say, we're not taking advantage of that.
So it seems like all the time Vermont and New Hampshire gets credit for being well-run states that seem to be rowing in somewhat the same direction. And Maine and Rhode Island seem to get kicked around a little bit for different issues. One that Maine has got just two different worlds. There's
Right.
it's a red and a blue state merged together.
Right.
And here we've got an issue of maybe competency and maybe corruption. So what's the transformation? What's the rebuild?
Well, again, I think the rebuild is being really clear about what type of state we want to be, what type of economy that is. Let's be really clear about what that looks like at some point in the future.
Right.
And let's have the healthy debates about that, because there are people that appropriately say, I want a different state.
Yeah.
Right? But we need to create a shared vision, and leadership is supposed to help us do that. Then we need to translate that into, how do we get there? What are the things we need to do? What are we going to do to evaluate what's more important, a reduction in the car tax or putting some money into strengthening our higher education system here in the state? How do we measure that? What strategy do we put that against? How does that tie to a shared vision? I would argue, I'm not sure it does. We try to set strategy one tactic at a time.
Right, and also I think it's where you are in place and time, right? Eliminating the car tax is pretty universal. It's going to make everybody happy. My kids are through college, one's finishing, but that doesn't have the same priority to me to make sure, just personally on an individual level. So, is there, how do you drive that? Right now, obviously, that's not being driven. Let me just go to and finish up with this. On the issue of economic development, we seem to be having a strategy right now of attracting top-level companies to open satellites, offices, functions here in Rhode Island. We incent them to do so. We underwrite some portion of the cost of moving here and what those jobs cost. And, sometimes it seems like a good deal and sometimes it doesn't seem like a good deal, but it's all in the eye of the beholder. Are there other states that are better at nurturing their developing companies? I don't see the same type of growth taking place or being championed or being announced about taking a company, whether it's yours or somebody else's, and saying, listen, this company's interesting. We're going to help them grow from 20 people to 200 people.
Yeah, and I think we're not unique in this regard. If you travel around the country and you look at economic development teams and how they create policy and enact under it, I'm not sure that as a country we don't need to work on this. But yes, in Rhode Island, we need to do better. Attraction is a part of it, but it's also about creating the right business climate and the conditions for all entities to be able to grow and hire more people at higher wages here today. It's about strengthening the entrepreneurial and startup community. It's about creating the conditions for every company and organization to be able to grow. Most of the job growth isn't going to come from the attraction, right? Some of it will, right? And it's highly visible, and it changes the psychology when you can bring new companies here. So we should do that.
Yeah.
But most of the job growth is going to come by helping companies create more jobs. They create the jobs, government doesn't. But what are the conditions that enable them to do that? What are the programs that can help them strengthen their competitiveness so that they can grow more jobs, particularly those jobs that are exporting services and products out of the state, as opposed to just the jobs that are selling stuff here to each other locally. But we need a program that does those things. I think the strategy of the governor and the economic development, the Commerce Group, has those pieces in it. We tend to talk about the stuff where the money's going to, which is very heavily betting on some of these incentives. And we can talk about whether that's the right balance and whether that should be better deployed to a balance between the attraction and the expansion. How do we help local companies to grow?
You're working in a lot of states. What's the tenor of the perception of those states' economic condition versus the tenor of the perception here in Rhode Island.
I actually think, it's interesting because the national conversation, depending on who you listen to, would suggest that our national economy is awful. Right? It has huge challenges, but let's be honest. We're at a point now where the national economy and the local economy is pulling out of a really deep hole. Right? And unemployment rates are at lows that we haven't seen in a very long time. Like whether politicians can take credit for that or not, I'm of the mind that since we blame them when it goes bad, they should be able to take credit when it goes good. But let's be clear, the things you do that change an economy happen over a 10-year period. They don't happen over a 2-year period.
And now they happen globally.
Right, and they happen globally. So, okay, so you take credit when the unemployment rate is low. But wait a minute, when the unemployment rate is low and we're playing from a position of strength, isn't this the time that we should do the more difficult things to make the transformational change that we need to reposition the economy? Instead, what we do, and this is the problem in Rhode Island here, we're the first one in and the last one out of every recession, because all we're doing is taking political credit for stuff that happens or blaming people when it goes poorly. How about actually measuring it based on what's the economy we really want? What's the 10-year time horizon? And what are the things we need to do now that are going to live beyond any political cycle that will help us do it? This is what we need as citizens, and we got to make sure our leaders are focused on the right set of decisions that will support that. Because the short-term stuff, the stuff that feels good politically, taking credit for the unemployment rate, like the way it is, that's not the stuff that changes an economy.
As always, thank you very much.